So welcome everyone. Today is our first section, okay, one of the 28 section, the first one. We are going to introduce this book called A Short History of Chinese Philosophy. But before that, let me go over the schedule, briefly go over the schedule. Last week is our 2024, the first meetup. Steve talking about the ancient game of Go. And this week, we talk about Spirit of Chinese Philosophy. That's a series for 28 chapters. And the next week, we will continue to introduce ancient game of Go. And next week, Steve is going to talk about computer versus the game of Go. Okay, so that's, I think his series, he tried to put the three. It's a short series, and probably he will make it longer. I don't know, So regarding the game, okay. And then February we will continue on Bhagavad Gita, and SK Sasha is going to continue. And last year we finished on chapter 10, and we will continue on chapter 11. And then February 10th, which is Chinese New Year, and Kwang is going to talk about the very first, or should not call very first, but it's one of the early dynasty, Zhou dynasty. And then we continue. CK will talk about, introduce another interesting person, a Koxian, and or some pop Chinese name will be Zheng Chenggong. Okay, so we will continue, and we continue on the history of Chinese philosophy, chapter 2. And keep going up. And please note that all these schedules are temporary, and then please pay attention on our weekly announcement. Okay. So that's we were doing, and just 1 minute. Let me see if we have a lot of people in the waiting room. Okay, so today's subject, okay, a short history of Chinese philosophy. The author is Feng Youlan. Okay. And today we are going to the very first chapter. And I already spent about 1.5 years go through this book, but a little bit randomly, because one of the reasons is I do not all agree with Feng Youlan's point of view. And then, but I think we should, but no doubt about it, he is a great philosopher and he did a great work, okay, for especially this book. So I'm going to faithfully follow chapter by chapter and go through this one. And to the point, we will go through this one, okay? So this book was written in 1947 when Feng Youlan was working in the University of Pennsylvania, and he tried to teach Chinese philosophy. So before that, he wrote a book called A History of Chinese Philosophy, and then he make it shorter. So he called it A Short History of Chinese Philosophy. And then this copy is from his preface. So I think it's interesting. He said, a short history of any subject should not simply be an abridgment of a large one. It should be a picture complete in itself, rather than a mere inventory of names and isms. To achieve this, the author should be, as a Chinese expression said, have the whole history in his mind. Okay? Only then he can give the reader an adequate and a well-rounded account within his chosen limited scope. I have read through all this book, and I do agree his point of view, because he is not abridgment. Basically, you can see it's a miniature of a big picture, mini-size picture. He really reduced, and he tried to touch every point of view in Chinese history. Okay, so Chinese name called 中国哲学小史. Okay, so the word short sometimes confuse people, and I think that in the sense should be called a brief history, right? Just like Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time, and another one he called A Briefer History of Time. This kind of sense, but it's not that brief. Actually, I think it has 200-300 pages. Okay, so I will spend every week. I probably will spend a few minutes talking about Feng Youlan, and Feng Youlan, I think he is a underrated philosopher. The reason is simple, because he was born in 1985, okay, and his life basically covered the early 20th century, and he did have a long life. You can see from his youth and when he was old, to 95 years old. And according to the internet, I think the Internet Encyclopedia, okay, introduction. Feng Youlan was representative of modern Chinese philosophy throughout his long and turbulent life. Okay, so during that time, he has to make choice, right? He has to, when the 1949 Chiang Kai-shek KMT government escaped from China, he had to make a decision whether or not he had to stay with the communist China or go to Taiwan with Chiang Kai-shek. Unlike his teacher, Hsun, who decided to go with Chiang Kai-shek to Taiwan, and he decided to stay in China. So for this point of view, he is not being respected for the scholar in Taiwan. So basically, he stayed in China. But unfortunately, Chairman Mao Zedong disliked him because he used to work for Chiang Kai-shek. So he is not being respected. And then during the Cultural Revolution, he tried to please, I think, Chairman Mao's wife. And then, and then after Deng Xiaoping and come out and then finish the Cultural Revolution, he has been put in the jail. Okay, so turn out not many people of China, Hong Kong, Taiwan respect him. And then people consider him as a shameless scholar because he tried to please everybody, and turn out, nobody respect him. Okay, but be honest, read his work, I can tell, he has full-hearted in Chinese philosophy or philosophy itself. So, in this way, I think we should re-evaluate him and then take a different view about him just based on his work. So please join us for this whole year and go through his book and understand him. Then we will have a fair idea about this scholar. So let me continue. Okay, he has long and turbulent life. He consistently engaged the problem of reconciling traditional Chinese thought with the method and the concept of modern Western philosophy. So he was educated. He finished his education in China, complete the traditional Chinese education, and he was the student of Hsun, I think in college, and then he's going to America to get a PhD, and Hsun recommend him. He has a choice of Harvard or Columbia, and I think his teacher recommend him to go to Columbia, and then eventually he got a PhD degree from Jiangsu. Okay, so all his purpose of his life is try to doing two things, and I summarize here: rewriting the history of Chinese philosophy from a modern perspective. Second, developing a constructive version of Chinese philosophy that could respond to the modern situation. Okay. So I think that's his goal. He want to do is take a different view from the modern perspective, okay, to see Chinese tradition. Second, he want to reconcile, redevelop, okay, Chinese philosophy to respond to the modern situation. We are not sure, okay, and then I think at least on the first point, he did a great job. And then on the second point, it's questionable. We don't know whether or not he developed he has something called 心理学, called the New Confucianism. I think it's called the New Confucianism, and which I don't know. It's not that popular. So when we have time, we can reevaluate his philosophy. So before I continue, any comment or question? No? Okay.
I might have a question. So, okay, I mean, philosophy is philosophy. The history of philosophy. But what do you mean by from a modern perspective? What's the point of interpret it in a modern way?
Okay. Mira, thank you very much. That's exactly I'm going to talk next. Thank you for bringing up this subject. Okay. Okay, so here, when I read the first chapter last year, or 2 years ago, when I read this book, I kind of skipped on the first two chapters, and I thought I'd know. And the second thing is, I'm not sure how to interpret, just like Mira asked the question, Chinese philosophy. Okay, so if you see our meetup group, I call it Asian philosophies. I use plurals, okay? So I don't use the singular term, okay? Because I believe there's different kind of philosophies, not just one philosophy. And here, Feng Youlan's book called Chinese Philosophy. So a few things we need to understand to avoid confusion, okay? And I don't want to cause a different kind of debate about what do you mean Chinese or what do you mean philosophy, what do you mean history. So let me make a very narrow definition. So the purpose I'm making this definition is to avoid unnecessary question. Okay, so first I would decide who is Chinese. Okay, so here the Chinese doesn't mean the citizen of China or people speak Chinese or people eat Chinese food or people follow the Chinese culture. Okay, we talk about here that's narrowly defined as the majority of educated people in China of 19th century. All right. So that's put in this narrow definition. These people, they have the fully Chinese traditional education, and then they don't understand the Western world. That's defined. Okay, the Chinese means this kind of Chinese, and I think it fit for the whole book. But that's the way I try to define. So remember, during that time, the literacy is probably only 10%. So if you have been educated in China, it probably only top 2-3% of people, not Chinese people in general. Okay, so that's the first thing I'd like to make it clear. So when we talk about Chinese philosophy on this book, in this section, we talk about a singular term. So in this way, we are talking about the way of thinking of those 19th century educated Chinese. Okay, so this kind of people, okay, what in their mind? So I would assume we can say, I think later on we will talk more clearly about this, is basics they have read Confucian classics, they have a strong family value, they have the ancestor worship, and then they have some Taoism and some Buddhism idea. Okay, let's assume this kind of people, then we can consider as a Chinese philosophy in the singular term. And the history of Chinese philosophy, the whole book, what Feng Youlan going to do is talking about the development or the process of development of Chinese philosophy over past 3,000 years. In other words, is how does this kind of thinking come into being, okay, through 3,000 years? An easy way to think about it is through the history for 3,000 years, they have many kind of thinking. That's why sometimes I will use the plural, okay, the philosophies instead of philosophy, because a lot of thinking has been remained. For example, Confucius is remained, but some thinking has lost, been eliminated. Nobody pay attention today. For example, Mohists thinking, and some are being highly focused, like Confucianism thinking, and some has been de-emphasized. Okay, so for example, the school of names. Okay, so people consider as a sophistry. So being de-emphasized, and some are being infused to the mainstream, like Buddhism thinking, Taoism thinking. It's not stand by itself, being infused together. And some has been branched out. For example, Zen Buddhism, they go to Japan and become Soto Zen or Rinzai Ren, right? Which are originated in China, but turn out to be popular in Japan. So that's all this one we are going through this. So that's in this term, we call it history of Chinese philosophy. So since we talk about Chinese philosophy, and then we will also use the term the West. Okay. So I believe the West here is should define as the 19th century European or American with high education. So none of us are West. Okay. None of us are Chinese based on this definition. So we will make this topic clear, and we can define. We can discuss the different kinds of thinking. So that's my suggestion to think about Chinese philosophy or Chinese versus the West. Okay. So they will make it clear. So any comment or suggestion on this one? Okay, the total is 28 chapters. So I'm going to do for 28 weeks. And if you just take a quick look, right? This week we talk about the spirit of Chinese philosophy. Then a few weeks later, we are going to talk about the background of Chinese philosophy. So the origin of school. Okay. Then after that, we will go through the major school, so Confucianism, Mohism, Taoism, school of name, Zhuangzi, Yin-Yang school, and legalism, legal school. Okay, all this one. Then we move to the later development in the Chinese history, and including the Neo-Taoism, Zen Buddhism, all the way through. So that's we are going to do. And then I think we probably the schedule-wise probably just right for this year's project. So that's kind of serve as the introduction before we go to the detail of the text. So I will pause here for 1 minute. Is any comment before we officially, not officially, but before we go into the text? I would suggest everyone read the text, and then the good thing of this project is for the 28 chapters, you can see each chapter is kind of independent. So if you miss one and you can jump in and read, it's not a problem. And everything I put in the recording, and then the PowerPoint presentation will be put in a file. So you can go back to look at, and then that's the suggestion. And I hope everyone will go with me and go through this one. Peggy, please.
Just a brief feedback or comment to your attempt to to the definition of being a Chinese.
Okay.
I'm not sure whether that is possible and helpful. Take into that example about educated Chinese, and that's is that actually accurate to reflect people who are interested in philosophy or involved in philosophy are educated? It's not necessary. So if you look at the history, if you look at the sixth patriarch Huinan, he was uneducated. He's illiterate, and it does not prevented him actually grasp the essence of Buddhism and so quickly and profoundly, and he himself later become a true master. And that's one point. But I do can here understand in terms of the definition of being Chinese. Certainly, it should not be the political one. It's based on belong to the system. In fact, if you're talking about the Hanren, you know, the ethnicity, I would argue the majority Japanese today are actually the Han people or have the Han blood. They are really with that culture. The other thing is, you know, if you want to excluding the Chinese overseas right now in the context of the philosophy, then it's also not that accurate because particularly for people who immigrated rather than born in the West, their life, their growth is inevitably embedded with the cultural, and that cultural deeply rooted with those philosophical thinking. Even one may not have read those books at all. Like myself, I have never actually read a Confucius book, any Confucius book fully myself.
Okay.
But I will
Thank
do
you,
that.
thank you. Okay, let me make it clear. Okay, so I'm not trying to define the meaning of the Chinese. Okay, I try to define the meaning of Chinese in this book. When we read this book or during this section, when we talk about Chinese, I don't want to have argue of Peggy, are you Chinese? Okay, because you are Australian. Okay, so
yes, I was born in mainland China. Yes.
Okay, so it's like I don't want have a discussion on this question. I only want to talk about just pinpoint one person. Okay, because it become like a branch out the discussion. Okay, so he's Chinese, and then when we talk about the Western thinking, people may say, no. Okay, my professor in Harvard never talk about this. That's too confusing. So that's just pinpoint. That's it. Okay. The Chinese is Feng Youlan's father. Okay. Feng Youlan's father actually probably a typical Chinese because he get past the civil exam. Okay, get a 进士. Okay, so this kind of person we can say he's Chinese. Okay, so that's why I try to make a very narrow definition. The purpose is to avoid argument. Okay, on this one, we focus on the philosophy. Okay.
Yeah, Jason, I would like to say that I agree with you. Okay, because Feng Youlan is the embodiment of the representation of the world of the Chinese gentry of the 19th century. And I think it's good to make that precision.
Okay, so I think that's my definition, and you can disagree, but I just the purpose make it. I just want to emphasize it. My purpose is to avoid argument like, oh no, Chinese doesn't think this way. Oh, Western doesn't see this way. That's the only purpose because this term is very confused, and that's that's one of the problems. I always hesitate to introduce the first few chapters of Feng Youlan, okay, because he kept using this term, and then I have no way to present unless I clearly define this term. Okay. So So let me move on, and then let me see. Okay, so this chapter I think is simple. Basics only talk about three parts, in my opinion. Okay, first talk about civilization, or talk about Chinese education. I defined the Chinese people, what kind of education they receive. Okay. Second, I'm going to talk about the philosophy, which means the way of thinking these people, Chinese people, have, in my definition of Chinese people, have. And then the last part, I'm going to talk about the translation, expression, interpretation, because we are dealing with foreign language, and a lot of time we're dealing with ancient, archaic Chinese. So that's the three part I'm going to do. And that's all in the Feng Youlan's book. So I'm going to start from the first one, and then Feng Youlan talk about, and the basic, a lot of people probably already know, right? For during the time, let's say 19th century, early 19th century, the highly educated people in China. Okay, so 4 books. Okay, so Confucian Analects, Book of Mencius, and the Great Learning, Doctrine of the Mean. So that's so-called 4 books. If you want to pass the civil exam, and that's the 4 books, you need to do it. And the Feng Youlan also introduced a book, which I think is worth to bring up here. The book called The 3 Characters Classic, 三字经. Okay. So this one today, I don't think it's popular, but a lot of people probably read it. And then, but during the early 20th century, for the educated family or a scholarly family, the kids always memorize all this. And the purpose is to help the kids recognize the Chinese character. And we all know Chinese characters have 10,000 characters. So you need to memorize all these characters. So this word I checked, it says 1,145 words, characters. And then, so for the kids, the purpose is to recognize the words, the characters, but also infuse some Confucian value, okay, to the pupil. Okay. So I just find the translation. Okay. At the beginning of life, man is good in nature, right? This one is Mencius thinking. Okay. Human nature is alike. Habits make them different. So for lack of education, the nature will change. So everybody is good. And why you have the bad people? Because you lack of education. So set a tone for the kids, right? So you are good in nature, and education is the most important thing. So while you are learning to recognize the character, also accept the Confucian value from this. And then go through to the 5 elements, famous people, all the dynasties, geographic location, and moral value, the 4 seasons, all this kind of basic knowledge. Okay. And to the end, talk about diligence as its reward. Praying has no benefit. So I think that's also the important message for the kids, right? Education, and then don't pray, spend your time studying. Okay. So we are not here to discuss that's right or wrong for education, but basics, that's for so-called Chinese people, in my definition, received during that time. So great learning, we don't have time to introduce all of them, but through the many years built up, we have on and off introduced some of that. I think so we talk about Mencius, and the Tuesday evening, Amang and I doing the translation. We also through the Confucius Analect from 20 books. We finished the 15 books. Okay, so, and right now we are doing Dao De Jing, the Taoist text, which is not included here. Okay, so great learning, I just want to show the example. Okay, so the size of 4 books. Analytics is about have 20 books, but don't be scared by the 20 books because you only have 10,000 characters, so relatively short. Mencius is much longer, but it's also not that long. And the Great Learning and the Doctrine of the Mean, I think each one has only a few hundred characters. It's not long. And in 2022, I have a section talking about the Great Learning 大学. Okay, so I just showed this one, and then if you are interested, you can do it. And then 大学 kind of consider the Great Learning, consider like set a tone for the Confucius learning. Importantly, they have the 3 guidelines. They have 8 steps from investigating things, extending your knowledge, making intention sincere, rectifying one's own heart, refining oneself, harmonizing one's family, governing the state, pacify the world, right? From your knowledge, yourself, and then your heart to your behavior, to your family, your state, and the world. Okay, so that's step by step to set a path from the beginning to the high scope. So that's the Great Learning, one of that. So basics, that's we are talking about so-called Chinese people. In my definition, this kind of education they receive. All right. Second, about the philosophy, right? So from your line here, here I'd like to make a point here is when we see the blue text, I use the blue text to represent what Feng Youlan's opinion, specific Feng Youlan's opinion. And if you see the purple text, that means my commentary, okay? And sometimes my commentary will be different than what Feng Youlan said. So I try to separate my opinion and Feng Youlan's opinion. So all this one is Feng Youlan's definition. He talked about philosophy is systematic, reflective thinking on life. Okay. So I believe probably you can agree on this one, but probably not everyone 100% agree on this. He talked about a philosopher must philosophize. Okay, so Feng Youlan is thinking about the philosophizing is important in his point of view, and he make the philosophy cover. Basically, he's talking about Chinese philosophy cover the theory of life, theory of the universe, and the theory of knowledge. And I think they relatively match with the Western philosophy thinking about the ethic, metaphysics, and epistemology. That's what I'm thinking. But that's Feng Youlan's category is in this way. So, and here is important about the 3 religions in China. I don't. Feng Youlan didn't talk about this. But he talked about the philosophy versus religion. But I think this one will be helpful to understand why Feng Youlan argued about the religious and versus philosophy. There's a famous saying from, I copied from the foreword of Dao De Jing translation by Jiang Wu Jingxiong. He's like another scholar from, I think from Taiwan, and he has a translation on Dao De Jing. And then in the foreword, he put both Confucian and the Taoism complement each other. However, incompatible they seem at first sight. The Confucianism place a man in his proper relation to his fellow man, and the Taoism place the man in the proper relation to the nature. And the third one, Buddhism, introduced from India, right? He talking about the human suffering and the man's ultimate destiny. So basically, his opinion, Wu Jinxiong, Jiang Wu's opinion is all Chinese, okay, this definition of Chinese has three religions, okay? So Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. And that's why finally he said the common saying that every Chinese wears a Confucian cap, a Taoist robe, and the Buddhist sandals. Okay. So this description is hard to argue is correct or not correct, okay? But the purpose of Jiang Wu is to kind of give the Western world an idea of what kind of religion. He called it the three religions. Okay. That's why we bring to Feng Youlan's writing. Feng Youlan kind of not agree on this one. So that's why he spent a lot of text talking about the difference between philosophy and religion. So each philosophy has according to Feng Youlan, has its philosophy part and the religious part. So Feng Youlan talking about the school of Tao, the Taoism, when we call it Taoism. If you take it as a philosophy, we call Daojia or school of Tao. That's why we read Dao De Jing, okay, or we read the Zhuangzi. I think last year we spent a lot of time reading Zhuangzi, the 7 chapters. But in another view, Taoism could be religious, right? Dao Jiao, okay, so religious Taoism. And I'm from Taiwan. I know Taiwan has a lot of temple, and all these temples are religious Taoism. Okay. So that's two different things, and then their approach is different, right? For example, the Daojia, the school of Tao, will see the death is nothing. Okay, so it's just nature. But religious Tao try to live longer. They do a lot of things to make you live longer. So that's a totally opposite idea. Same as Buddhism. We call Foxue, okay, the Buddhist learning, which talking about the emptiness, right? The Buddhahood, nirvana, four noble truths, okay, eightfold ways, okay. So meditation, that's all philosophy. But in another way, something called Fojiao, that's Buddhism, Buddhist religion, which will focus on the rituals, monastic practice, follow the precepts, chanting, ceremonial ritual, okay, all this kind of thing. So they all, even we see Taoism and the Buddhism as a different philosophy, but they all have their religious part. And in a way, you will find out, from time to time, we find out that the Buddhism learning and the school of Tao kind of like get together, because in today's interpretation of Tao or Taoism philosophy, a lot of Buddhism flavor has been used to interpret the Taoist philosophy. Same way, religious Taoism and the Buddhism religion become together, because you go to the temple. Sometimes you don't know, even it's a Taoism temple, but there's a lot of Buddha, Bodhisattva are there. So they are Buddhism. So it kind of all mixed together. That's why Jiang Wu is talking about 3 religions. Then here, Feng Youlan want to talk is Confucianism. And I think he is thinking about Confucianism is the merge, or we can call beyond religion. Okay, that's my understanding of Feng Youlan's point, because he is a deeply Confucian scholar. So of course, he favored Confucius. I will stop here for a moment. If you have a question or comment, something, suggestion, disagree? Clint, please.
Hi, just a quick thought here. In parallel to what you said about a mix of three religions, more or less, that in a single person, could we also talk in the same way about a single person being religious and as somewhat a philosopher at the same time? Because to me, this distinction between religious Taoism, for example, or Buddhism, and philosophical Buddhism or Taoism or any religion or teaching, it's a bit of an artificial construct. I would say that majority of people are probably both, right? So it's just like a conventional tool to think of two ends of the spectrum, as one is philosophical and the other one is religion, just for the convenience of thinking about things. But in reality, I think everything takes place simultaneously.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I think there's no pure, well, there's some pure philosophy, also some pure religion, let's put it this way, right, on the different end of spectrum. But for the most of the case, right, they are both, just depend on which component dominate, let's put it this way. Kwang, please.
I would like to go back to the distinction that Feng Yaolang gave for the distinction between religious Taoism and philosophical Taoism. Okay. He said that for philosophical Taoism is going with nature, that you learn how to be in harmony with nature, and that in religious Taoism, for example, the alchemists and so on, they will try to find way to prolong life and even to be immortal. So that is truly going against nature to go above nature. I think the distinction is conceptually interesting. However, I tend to agree with the guy just speaking before me, in the sense that if we go back to the epistemological development as has been explained in chapter 38 of the Tao Te Ching, we go through a conceptual phase in philosophical Taoism to finally reach to the top, which means the harmony with the reality. So I think that the scientific endeavor or the technological endeavor to master nature is not necessarily in contradiction with the harmony with nature, but the journey to the harmony with nature is a superior endeavor to the journey of mastering technologically machines to overcome natural difficulties. So I think both are steps of the same endeavor, but the technological conquest of nature is of inferior nature, and the philosophical or epistemological endeavor to be in harmony with nature is the same adventure, but at a higher level.
Thank you, Kwang. Okay, so Klim, let's go to Klim, please.
Yes, thank you for that clarification, Kwang.
We cannot hear you clearly. Can you speak loudly?
Oh, sorry. I think Kwang, thank you for the clarification. Additional thought here on what has just been covered. There was a mention on this statement, the beginning of the philosophy, right? In Chinese terms, that a person is good from the origin, like originally a person is inherently good, and that goes I guess in sharp contrast with the Judeo-Christian, probably more of a Christian teaching, that there's this concept of the original sin. So the question that I have, though, is, well, the person is originally good in Eastern terms, but there's some significant level of education, right, and grooming required to, I guess, make that person shine. There's some, culturing that needs to happen. How does that, that the need for culturing, why is it there if the person is originally good? Like, what's missing, or is there like an entropy going on that you're born good, but then you still go through that descent of the sinful decline that needs to be somehow repaired?
Okay, Karim, thank you for the question, but I'm sorry, we are not going to discuss this question because this question has been argued for 2,000 years. So, we will have a chance to talk about the human nature is good when we deal with Mencius. Okay, he's the person argue human nature is good, and then when we deal with Neo-Confucianism in the 10th century, we will talk about the human nature is good again, but this one, so-called the naturally good, become the metaphysically good. Okay, so that's another argument on that. And they also have another school argue about human nature is bad. Okay, so that's why education is important. So I'm sorry, we're probably not going to discuss this one today, but today we serve as an introduction and then go through, what formula is going to cover and the spirit of the Chinese philosophy. So sorry, Karim, and I hope you continue with us, and then we will. I believe you will find satisfied answer, through this year. So I'm going to through the formula and also talk about so-called super moral value, and I think formula want to argue is Confucianism is superior, okay? So, which is the major part of he called Chinese philosophy, okay? So, I try to summarize what he is talking here, okay? So, all this is I put is Feng opinion, right? So, basics Feng is talking about he called the super moral value, which is loving God beyond this world. Okay, so in Vienna Circle, basically they reject the existence of God. They reject all the metaphysical discussion. So that's nothing about this. Christian and Feng argue is loving God, but Christian God is a personified God, which is the extension of loving this world. Okay, so that's only have the different level, but the quality of love is still the same. And then Spinoza, if you know Spinoza kind of, we call it the monism. Okay, basically his God is the universe, the entire world, the being is the God. So Feng would believe super moral value, Spinoza would believe that's the super moral value, which Feng think about loving Chinese philosophy, and I think he meant the so-called the Confucianism is loving universe through the Tao. Okay, so not through the religion or through learning. Okay, so I think Feng opinion is Chinese philosophy is beyond religion. Through philosophy, you can love the universe beyond this world, okay, without religious components like a Christian. That's his point of view. I know we probably can argue about he's right or wrong for a long time, but that's what I get from his text. Okay, and he used the example which I think that makes some sense. He quote from 道德经 chapter 48, which said to work on learning is to increase day by day. To work on Tao is to decrease day by day. Why is it decrease? We are not going to argue on this part because we are not talking about Taoism philosophy. But important message here is in Chinese philosophy, to work on learning and to work on Tao are two different concept. Okay, so that's why he said in the tradition Chinese philosophy there is a distinction between working on learning and working on Tao. And this part I kind of agree, because if you go through the Western philosophy, faith is an important argument. Okay, faith is important argument. And sometimes you will think about through Chinese philosophy, probably Chinese, through the history, people never talk about faith. All right. I think the reason could be this, because from the beginning, because in the Western or Christian tradition, if you want to go beyond this world, okay, that's not your knowledge by learning is not going to reach there. So you need the revelation, you need faith to jump to a different level. But in Chinese philosophy, basics at the beginning, Chinese separate working on learning, so-called 为学, and working on Dao, 为道. So through Dao, you can go beyond this world. I think that's what he meant here. So here, Wang Youlan want to ask a good question about what can we learn from Chinese philosophy. Remember, he wrote this book is when he taught in University of Pennsylvania, okay, in early 20th century. So of course he want to answer this question, right? What can we learn from Chinese philosophy? So his word is, in the world of future, men will have a philosophy in the place of religion. I know not everybody agree on this one, but that's he said. And he believes the philosophy is superior to religion. And this is consistent with Chinese tradition. That's because Chinese, that's why I put Jiang Wu's quote forward on that, because a lot of people think about, and you can see a lot of, in a lot of college, most of Chinese philosophy, Eastern philosophy has been not in the philosophy department, it's in the theology department, because the Western world kind of treat all Chinese philosophy as part of theology. And I think this part, Feng Youlan disagree. That's why he will say the Chinese philosophy is beyond, super to philosophy. So in his point of view, if you learn Chinese philosophy, you don't need the religion because it will replace it. Okay, that's his point of view. Okay, I know we are not going to argue if he's right or he's wrong. That's his point of view. And then I'm going to share my view here. That's why I put in the purple text, because I'm interested in the Western philosophy, and I also interested in the Chinese philosophy. And I also ask myself, what can I learn from Chinese philosophy? So I put three things. One is the pluralism. Second is eclecticism. Third one, I call it approach, okay, suspension of judgment, which is from the Sextus Empiricus, right? So by learning Taoism, 庄子 or 道德经, I do learn, when you go to the Western philosophy, you don't have to judge on the rationalism, empiricism, realism, idealism, nominalism, all kind of things. You can suspension of judgment. Okay, that's what I learned from the Taoism text. Eclecticism. Okay, so basically from Neo-Confucianism, I learned, the attitude of philosophizing. Actually, you don't have to stand which side. Okay, so for example, like Neo-Confucianism, they take a traditional Confucian teaching, and then they merge. Okay, they take flavor from Taoism, basically Neo-Taoism, and the Buddhism teaching. So that's the attitude I can learn. Okay, of course, that's just my opinion. Pluralism, Okay, what I learned is from the sixth school in the early time before Han Dynasty, because they all try to resolve the same problem. But you can see different school, Mohism, Confucianism, Yin-Yang school, school of name, legalism, they all try to resolve the problem happen in China, but they come with a totally different solution. And then from this, I learned to appreciate different school. Okay. Of course, that's just my opinion of why I learned this one and what I can learn from Chinese philosophy. That's just my opinion, which is different than Feng Youlan's opinion. Okay, I just come here to share with everyone. Kwang and Kate.
Yes, my first comment is maybe the less important of the two. Why the Chinese philosophies with S or with no S is not taught in philosophy department in the West rather than in sinology department? Well, you know, my answer, and I think it's the right answer, of course, I'm biased. It's simply colonial pretensions of the Westerners that they would take another century to get rid of, because they consider that the only philosophy that exists is Western philosophy. And the rest, when they are nice enough, they would talk about Chinese thinking and not Chinese philosophy. And that one being said, I go to my second comment, which is more important. You say something very interesting. Between mind and awareness. When you say that you learn that in Chinese philosophy, you would put in parenthesis the thinking process and you will learn to go deeper in awareness. I think that in Asian philosophy and in Chinese philosophy, we have the section would correspond to empiricism, rationalism, etc., all the ism that you can find in Western philosophy. But when you go to the deeper aspect of philosophy, meaning if I use the Chinese concept of the hexagram, meaning when you go into the upper trigram, you will precisely learn to how to connect with pure awareness. And I think that is the distinction precisely in Eastern philosophy, including Indian philosophy and not only Chinese philosophy, in the sense that in Indian and Chinese philosophy, you will find stuff that would correspond to epistemology, to ontology, and to ethics, okay, which are the ism of Western philosophy, and would correspond to line 3 of the hexagram, meaning the highest line of the hexagram in the lower trigram. But when you will go into the upper trigram, that is here that the Indian philosophy and the Chinese philosophy will bring something different, which is the deeper adventure into pure awareness or into dhyana. Okay, as you know, the Sanskrit word dhyana has been translated in Chinese as chana or chan, and to Japanese as zenna or zen. Okay, so that deeper epistemological adventure is the second part and the deeper part of Eastern philosophy, either Indian or Chinese. I stop here.
Okay, thank you, Kwang. Kate, please.
I thought it was interesting how here he really like it makes sense that in the Chinese philosophy he has like it's either philosophy or religion, like they're on two different ends, which is very different from what I'm used to by like for me, usually I would think of like religion is within philosophy. So when you look at the classical like Western philosophies, some of them will be very vague and then others will give you rules, right? Like Kant will say to do what is right, right? And then religion seems to be like a subset within philosophy, and this is like completely different. Like they're like it's either religion or it's philosophy. So I found it very interesting because I've never thought about it that way. And also second point is I do see why he says religion is not in harmony with science in these instances. However, when it comes to like Christianity, many times there were successful attempts at making both coexist and not be like still make logical sense and not contradict each other. So that's another thing that like I'm not used to. It's very like it's either this or it's not. So I find it very interesting how there is that divide in all three that he mentioned, philosophy / religions.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm not going to respond on this one because that's all a very big question. And I think today we will face a lot of questions we deserve to discuss for the rest of, at least for the rest of this year, or probably rest of the life, you know. So that's all big question. Kwang, please.
I would like to read the 7 lines from the first chapter of Feng Yaolong book because I think it's really extraordinary. Now,
which chapter you are going to read?
Yes, it will take 2 minutes.
Okay.
It's from page. Let me see. It's from the second page. From the second page, second paragraph. Okay.
I can show the text if you want me to show the text.
Yeah, sure.
Just 1 minute. I need to deal with. Okay, second page.
Second page, third paragraph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 line. Start with now. What the philosopher called.
Hold on, that's long. Okay, here.
Yeah.
Oh no,
you have it?
Okay, so chapter 1.
Chapter 1. Second
page 2, right? Second page.
Third paragraph.
This kind of thinking is called the reflective.
Exact.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so such theories are all the products of reflective thinking. The very concept of life, the very concept of the universe, and the very concept of knowledge are also the products of reflective thinking. No matter whether we think about life or whether we talk about it, we are all in the midst of it. And no matter whether we think or speak about the universe, we are all a part of it. Now, it's the part that I like the most. Now, what the philosophers call the universe is not the same as what the physicists have in mind when they refer to it. What the philosophers call the universe is the totality of all that is. It is equivalent to what the ancient Chinese philosopher Huishi called the Great One, which is defined as that which has nothing beyond. So everyone and everything must be considered part of the universe. When one thinks about the universe, one is thinking reflectively. That's what I wanted to read.
Okay, thank you, Kwang. And you want to talk about the significance on this one? I'm not surprised you like this one. So, but is anything else you want to say about this?
I would be very short. What the philosopher called the universe is the totality of all that is. Okay, I think that here in that single line, Feng Yaolan is making the very clear distinction between philosophy, which is an endeavor that is comprehensive, that is encompassing, okay, versus religion, which is more sectarian and which is more a doctrine, which is not as comprehensive and as encompassing than the philosophical endeavor. For example, science and technology is part of the philosophical endeavor. It is often understood in the West that the science and technology have replaced philosophy. I don't think so, because philosophy is the source of science and technology, and the philosophical reflection is still nourishing the advancement of technology and of science, which is a smaller part of philosophy. So I just want to stop by saying that what the philosophers call the universe is the totality of all that is, including technology, science, religion, and whatnot. I stop here.
Okay, thank you for explaining. I believe it's the same view as Feng Youlan's view. You agree with that, right? So Not agree with the part of religion or religious exercise, the concept of religion. Okay. Ken, please.
Thanks, Jason. So, hey, I'm Ken. I'm pretty new here, but I think I've spoken to some of you yesterday. So I think it's interesting that we're debating this problem, whether there is a distinction between, I guess, philosophy and religion and science. And I think this is where what you said earlier, Jason, came in, when you said, you know, he's from your line sort of writing as a modern philosopher looking back. And I think this is where the distinction comes from. And, you know, because originally all of these ideas were all the same, as Quan said, whether it's religion or philosophy or science. And, you know, in the Western world, you do have people who are sort of both religious and philosophical. Like, you know, in Christianity, you've got Augustine, you've got Thomas Aquinas, you've got Pascal, Kierkegaard, and those guys. So, you know, I think this is a fairly arbitrary distinction. And I think Feng Youlan, as an intellectual, he's sort of trying to carve out a space for himself in this particular case. It's a kind of sectarianism. You know, it's kind of like how, you know, like whether Protestants broke off from Catholics, or whether Zen Buddhism broke off with, you know, the rest of Buddhism, whether, you know, Mahayana Theravada distinction. I think it's a kind of sectarianism, although it's a new kind of, not just between different religions, but different ways of thinking.
Mm. Okay, thank you, Ken. Okay, so we can discuss this later, and then you will see more. And I will suggest let's give some space for Feng Youlan. He was like 100 years older before us. Yeah, he wrote this one long time ago. Let's put it this way. And then his mind is probably a little bit different, because some scholars compare his view on the Western world with Hsun, another. Hsun understand Christian much better, and Feng Youlan probably don't have much contact with Christian. Okay. So, okay, that is the difference. But, you know, I thank you for your opinion and then the difference here. So let's move on, and then through the years, we will have a lot of things to discuss on this one. So second part, Feng Youlan want to talk about is the philosophy. I think he tried to do is try to talk about some key point about the Chinese philosophy, so-called Chinese philosophy. He tried to do. So he will try to introduce a few concepts. Okay, remember, he writing this book is to the Western student, right, in the University of Pennsylvania, which 1940 something, I believe during that time the student probably don't know much about Chinese philosophy. Okay, so or even okay, so one concept he want to introduce is about sage. In Chinese word called 圣人. If you want to translate the word by word, you can call it holy man. Okay, but just don't misunderstand this word. The sage is not religious sage, not Christian saint, not Hindus, more on the religious side. Okay, and also not Greek kind of sage. Okay, I think Socrates or Plato talk about they have the 7 sages. Close to that, but it's not. Okay, no specific person as a sage. Basics, I translate as a sage, and the most translation called sage. Okay, so Feng Youlan's definition is it refers to a person of consummate virtue. Sage were regarded by ancient Chinese as having the highest level of characters and integrities. They know the way of heaven and the heart of people. You know the heaven and the people, and can thus make rule and regulate human ethic. Important thing is they make rules. Okay, so with their extreme statements and the behavior, they were paragons of virtue. Okay. So that's his definition of 圣人, which I agree. I think that's the general concept of 圣人 or sage in Chinese philosophy. But what kind of virtue, what kind of behavior we consider as sage is different from school to school, right? But the definition of sage are the same, but the contents of the sage is different for different school. Okay, so that's the way in the Chinese philosophy, which is very different than Western philosophy. So in this way, some words you will see is 君子, and we translate as the gentleman, okay, or 君子. So the difference between sage and the 君子 is you don't become a sage, but you can become 君子 or gentleman by working. Sage will make laws, make moral laws, and the 君子 is perfect the moral law. He follow the moral laws and do it. And then for different school, what's the moral law is different and sometimes opposite. But the concept of sage, okay, is the same. So Feng use, I think that's Feng text. He used Mencius definition, right? Mencius said, just as the campus and the ruler are instruments for square and the circle, sages are models for ethical behavior. That's that's Mencius definition of 圣人. Basically say model may not be correct translation, called 人人之治也. Basically it should be the perfection of the moral, and basically he make the moral law. Okay, so 道德经 chapter 2 also talk about sage deal with the world affair with 无为, without action, teach people without word, which is different than Confucius teaching, but the concept of sage is there. So that's one thing when we go through the Chinese philosophies, you will see sage all the time. And we should not see sage as a religious leader, or don't see sage as certain people. Basically, it's a placeholder, okay, for the lawmaker, okay, the perfect lawmaker in this way. Kwang, please.
I just want to add something. When I talked maybe 10 minutes ago, I was a little bit unfair with Western philosophy. When I say that Western philosophy doesn't have the layer that go into pure awareness, I forgot to say that one of Plato's dialogue, the Ephthyphro, will speak about holiness, okay? And that holiness is precisely to be whole, to be a healthy person. And in that understanding of Western philosophy, according to the dialogue called Ephthyphro, we have the concept of pure awareness. And also in the dialogue called the Phaedo, when Socrates would talk about something that remains there unwaveringly throughout all your bodily experiences, all your conceptual experiences, and all your emotional experiences. So that was the perfect Greek expression of something that in Asia we call pure awareness. So all my apologies for being unfair to Western philosophy.
All right, thank you, Kwang. Okay. So second concept, okay, here is also, I think that's also important. And then when we go through the text about this word and the other word, and I think this concept is not new for everyone, right? So when you study philosophy, even Western and Chinese philosophy, the concept of this word and the other word, in Chinese word we call 入世 and 出世, right? So that's the two different concepts. So Feng Youlan want to ask this question. We all know they have this word and the other word. And then the question is, do they necessarily have to abandon society? I mean, this word, okay, to go to the other world, okay? So we all live in this world. And we know they have other world. And then do we need to give up, abandon this world? And the Fong-Yulan's answer is very interesting. He talked about Christianity. Christianity talking about being with God. And here I quote, I think there's many places in Bible talking about being with God. And the basic talk about together with them in the cloud to meet the Lord in the air. Or like when Jesus ascend to the heaven. Basically, he abandoned this world. He leave this world, go to heaven. When the good person die, he go to the heaven. He leave this world. Okay, and even in Plato, right? Phaedrus talking about the soul and the body. Soul is entirely fastened and welded to the body. So he talk about the bodies like prison, right? The prison bars, okay, hold the soul. So Phaedrus is talking about the last day of Socrates. So before he died, and he talked about Socrates will be free. So he leave this body. Buddhism talking about Four Noble Truths: suffering, cause, cessation, and path. You leave this world, right? Zhuangzi, okay, I think we read this one before, talking about in the chapter 6, talking about the life is like a tumor. Death is like getting out of this tumor. So all talking about give up this world to go to other world. And then Fong-Yulan's explanation is Chinese philosophy. I think here he meant much more about Confucianism. Okay, is both this world and the other world. That's Fong-Yulan's comment. That's why he's talking about most of the philosophy is give up this world and go to the other world. And the Fong-Yulan would like to talk about Chinese philosophy is have this world and our world connect together, or you can take care of both. I think that's his opinion, and it's difficult to agree or disagree, but I do see the view is different because in tradition Chinese point of view, okay, or in my definition of Chinese philosophy, basically was kind of see the other world as organic growth from this world instead of a gap, this world and the other world. I think that's what Fong-Yulan means. Okay, so that's what I read, and welcome to have your opinion and how do you think? So we have Howard. Howard.
Hi, Jason. Can you explain a bit what is meant by identification of the individual with the universe?
Excuse me, I didn't get your question.
Can you, well, in the first sentence, when you say the highest achievement of the sage is identification of the individual with the universe, can you explain what is meant by identification of the individual with the universe?
Oh, identification of the, okay. The highest achievement of sage is identification of the individual with the universe, right? That's the one. So basics, that's the point of the sage achievement. Here he's talking about Confucianism or traditional Chinese thinking, the man and the so-called harmony between man and the heaven universe. You can read as a heaven, okay, and the heaven is not Christian kind of heavenly heaven. It means the heaven, Tian, okay, and some translation will do heavens, okay. It's a higher order of the world. So again, we can read as the organic connection, organic growth from this world to other world, so-called heaven, man, and earth. They all connect together. That's the thinking, we have. I hope I make it clear, but we will.
Yeah, I think so. You mean harmonization? Harmonization between those two different orders, effectively, between
You mean
here and
how to harmonize?
no, the word identification here. You mean harmonization?
Identification of the you say I mean the harmonization could be, but I'm not very sure. That's the text. I think this concept is more start to develop in the Han Dynasty, and then we probably will talk about this. I hope I can explain better, but sorry if it's not very clear. If anyone can help me, that'd be great. Madeline and Kate.
Well, thanks, Jason. I think we're off to a good start with the book.
I think we will have a more question than answer, especially for this one.
I'm looking at these three, Christianity or four, Platonism, Buddhism, and then Chung-Shu. And I'm seeing one of these things is not like the other ones. So with Christianity, Platonism, and also in Buddhism, the soul is a separate entity from the body and is going to leave, or depending on the school of Buddhism, if you can purify your soul enough, then you won't have to come back, etc. The bottom one is an entirely different type of metaphor and way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like the world is a body and your life is one growth. And don't take it too hard because it's part of this big body, as opposed to the sort of container theory of life and the soul.
Well, I agree with you, and I think you have been read Zhuangzi through the 7th chapter, inner chapter. Yeah, I think you are right. Okay, so that's the naturalism. Let's put this way, thinking about if you die, the body become part of the world. In this sense, you are not dying. Okay. We have a Kate and a Kwang.
When I was reading that part about identification of the universe, I took it as you can't be fully identified with the universe until you die, basically. Like it's saying that, because even like the last line here, it says death is to be when death is like a positive thing breaking a tumor. So it's like you can't fully reach that identification until you die, basically. Would you say that's correct, or is that?
I don't know if it's correct or not, but thank you for your interpretation. I think that okay. So welcome to have your own opinion, because I only can share what I understand. Kwang, please.
Yes, I would like to come back a little bit. I think it was Howard who brought that question on the identification.
Okay, please.
And please forgive me, but I am coming back once again with one of my obsessions when I'm in this group, meaning the hexagram. Okay, because your identification is precisely where is the focus of your pure consciousness. And the hexagram is precisely the symbol of one of the symbols of Chinese culture for the 6 layers of the mind, and for where the focus of your consciousness would be put on. Okay, if you are more bodily anchored, you would be identified to the first line, which is the body and the sense perception. If you are more obsessed by the intellect, meaning the images, the words, the concept, you wouldn't be your pure consciousness would be on the second line. If you're more obsessed with the social skills, how to deal with others, and with diplomacy and all those stuff, let's say being streetwise, you would be focused on the third line. And your pure consciousness would be focused on the fifth if it's more about beauty, meaning justice. The fifth meaning goodness, meaning valor, humanity, and the sixth meaning wisdom, or the Shenran, as the Chinese said. Okay, but that pure consciousness, according to the teaching of the sages, should not be prisoner of any of those lines, but should be capable to move freely according to the circumstances on any of those lines, according to the present needs. And because theoretically, at the end, or at the achievement of the epistemological journey, it would be to be free, precisely, not to be a prisoner at any of those layers of the mind, but traveling freely in all those layers of the mind. And I would say that Feng Yaolan, in his first chapter, was making the distinction, as the PG wrote in the chat maybe 10 to 15 minutes ago, between the concept of otherworldly or this world. And I would say that he wrote that to introduce a conceptual distinction. But theoretically, let's say that I admire Feng Youlan enough for thinking that probably he was a free man, but that he introduced that notion just to make a conceptual distinction between the lower trigram that he called this world, and the upper trigram that he would call otherworldly, but it's only a conceptual distinction, because the reality is that the both are together with the pure consciousness, which is not prisoner of any layers of the mind or the 6 lines of the hexagram. And I will take 20 seconds to say that in Taoism, there is a distinction of a soul that is separate from the body. And the Taoism would make the distinction between the 3 Hun and the 7 Po. Okay, San Hun, Qi Po. So the Qi Po are related to the body, but the San Hun are something that is higher. Okay, and I see a question by D and J. I cannot resist to give him a short answer to his question. According to me, what is pure consciousness? Pure consciousness is the light of awareness that is not identified with the body, with the sense perception, with the intellect, with the psyche, with the timeless form of beauty, with the timeless form of goodness, with the timeless form of truth. So pure consciousness is only awareness without an object of thought. I stop here. I'm sure that my answer is far to be enough, and we can talk for 20 hours about what is pure consciousness.
Okay, thank you, Kwam. And we will have more than 20 hours to talk about this, through Clean, okay. So we have to move on. Okay, so Clean, please.
Yeah, just a quick comment here. And Kwon already mentioned, among other things, this element of wisdom, I guess at some layer of the thinking, or the process of reconstituting a living being to be more attuned to the reality. So I think this term, the obviously more of a Western nature, it comes as, I think, as a helper, the wisdom, as opposed to just philosophizing, right? And so it's kind of interesting that in the text at hand, at least the first chapter doesn't go into that narrow definition of what other elements of philosophizing maybe, but the suggestive approach and very practical approach of the Chinese philosophy has that element in it, which I think this term, the Western term wisdom, can be helpful in maybe narrowing down the understanding. It's because there's a lot of it, at least to the Western mind and the Western psyche, that there's this element of wisdom that is sort of like a direct perception maybe of things, and maybe less words, fewer words, but more some kind of act or internal work that an individual does.
Okay, thank you, Clint. And we have Mira. Then I have to move on. Okay.
I have a quick question. The trigram that Quan mentioned so many times, is it the Tai Chi, the Taoism gram, or what is? Can you clarify?
Okay, that's regarding the I Ching, the Book of Change. And I would suggest, Kwang, I think probably next time you should make a section talking about the I Ching. I don't think you ever talk about I Ching.
Oh, okay, thanks.
It would be with great pleasure, Jason.
Yeah, think about that. We can work together. Okay, so I know that's an important part for you, and then that's to have a systematic understanding of this part. So, Madeline, please.
Yes, I just have a quick question for Quan. Are you fitting all the type of thinking in Western philosophy into one of those lines on the hexagram?
Oh yes, I think that Western philosophy has stuff that correspond to 1 to 2 to 3 and to 4 to 5 to 6. Western philosophy is a complete system of exploration of reality, and certainly fills all the 6 lines according to my understanding.
Yeah, that's not a surprise answer. Remember, Juan constantly talk about he's obsessed about this, so the answer must be yes.
Yes, absolutely.
But anyway, thank you, Kwang. And then I hope we are waiting for Kwang to give us a good explanation of this, since that's his his philosophy. That's pretty soon. Okay, so I'm going to introduce another concept, so-called the 内圣外王, sageliness within and kindness without. Okay, I think this one is a different concept in the Chinese philosophy, and that's why Feng Youlan keep claiming it's the goal is not only for this world, also the life. It's bigger than Western. Okay, in this sense, we will have the time section to discuss this one when we talk about Neo-Confucianism. But I just want to quickly drop out this name: sageliness within and the kindness without. Sageliness talking about the moral, the character, and then kindness talking about political and the social function. So in Feng Youlan's opinion, these two is combined with this world and other world, realism and idealism, and then so that's his point of view. And interestingly, he tied this concept with Plato's Republic, philosopher king. Okay, so in this sense, a philosopher also a political leader. Okay, so in this way, so I think that's he want to talk about. And then since the high score is the sageliness within and the kindness without, then the all Chinese philosophy become the Tao to this goal. So basics is how to question, right? How to achieve the sage, or how to achieve the sageliness within and the kindness without, 内圣外王, this kind of concept. So again, for different school will have a different way, different Tao to reach this goal. So I just quickly list a few schools. For example, in Taoism, what you need to do is 无为. Forgive me, it's a little bit oversimplified, but just give you a flavor. When we think about the sageliness and the kindness, so how to reach this goal? In Taoism teaching, it's 无为. In Confucianism teaching, it's so-called 仁 or benevolence, the ritual, the ancient teaching, the ritual. For the school of names, we talk about rectifying the relationship between name and the fact, or what you want to call it the name and the actuality, right? And for monism, talk about the love, the universal love. For the legalism, they talk about the two handles, reward and the punishment. I know this one is a little bit oversimplified, but it's just to give you a flavor about this. So basics, that's the major part of Feng Youlan's chapter 1, the spirit of Chinese philosophy. Then next part, I'm going to move to the translation, expression, interpretation. So let me go through this one, and then we will have some time to have a further discussion. I think some of you know Amang and I and Kwang also get a great help during the Tuesday evening when we work on the translation from the Chinese ancient texts. We did the Confucius Analect, Art of War, and right now we are doing the second time Dao De Jing translation. Through this project, I do have a lot to say about the translation, because when we deal with the Chinese philosophy, there's many layers we need to overcome, right? So not only the language, also the way of philosophical expression. If you compare to Chinese text, you will find out that according to Feng Youlan, which I totally agree, the briefness, disconnectedness. Okay, so you don't see the text like when you read in the Western philosophy, right? So and then something Feng Youlan talk about is the suggestiveness, but not articulateness. So that's the first thing when we read the Chinese philosophy. If you read the Dao De Jing, that's very clear. You kind of see like, why don't you speak clearly? You just leave a lot of space. But again, I think that's related to the Chinese tradition. This kind of suggestiveness, but not articulateness, is not only in philosophy, also in the Chinese painting, in Chinese poetry, right? If you read the Chinese poetry, most are very short, 20 characters, 28 characters, 40, 48, very short. Okay, so the intention is not speak clearly. Okay, leave a lot of space for you to imagine, to think. Same as the Chinese painting, you will see there's a lot of white space on the painting. That's the try to give you some room to think. So that's why the first difficult when we read the Chinese philosophy. So here we put the example here, right? So I think everybody know the text, the Dao De Jing, the first chapter, talking about the Dao can be said or can be Dao. It's not the eternal Dao. The name can be named. It's not the eternal name. That we can translate in many ways. But basics, it makes it very clear, right? The name, the real name or the eternal name cannot be named. That's why when you read Chinese philosophy, unlike in the Western philosophy, you probably will see a lot of name, right? Like realism, okay, idealism, empiricism, rationalism, nominalism. Okay, so a lot, and even in the realism, you have the neo-realism, critical realism, the direct realism. So there's many names here. So Chinese philosophy doesn't have a lot of name on that because the eternal name cannot be named. Again, that's another one is from Zhuangzi. And I think Pin talked about this story many times. So the story is talk about the basket trap, right? To catching a fish, right? When you get a fish, you can forget about the basket. The foot trap is for catching the hares. But when one get the hares, you don't need the trap. So words is for holding ideas. But when one get the ideas, one need we don't no longer need the word. So how can I learn from words, right? Because if somebody already get the idea, get the philosophy, he already forgot the word, then how can he teach? So you can argue it's not correct, but that's the essence. Let's put it this way in the Chinese text, and that we face the difficulty when we try to introduce the Chinese philosophy, because you don't see the text like Plato, right? If you read Plato, the Plato Republic, 10 books, the Laws, 12 books, right? If you read Kant, 3 critiques, I think total have like 2,000 pages, but Confucius Analect, only 10,000 characters, Tao Te Ching, only 5,000 characters. So the size is uncomparable. So that's the difficult part. And then we also face a lot of great commentators, right? For example, when we read 4 books, Confucius Analects, we are dealing with Zhu Xi's interpretation. When we read Zhuangzi, we deal with Guo Xiang's interpretation. And today's Tao Te Ching, there's a lot of Wang Bi's interpretation or commentation. They are great commentators, just like Asvina is a great commentator for Aristotle, and Thomas Aquinas for the Bible. We don't know what's original. So that's another difficult part about the Chinese text, right? So that's Feng Youlan like to quote this one many times. He said, everyone said it was Guo Xiang who wrote commentary on Zhuangzi. I will say it was Zhuangzi who wrote commentary on Guo Xiang. So a lot of time when we read Tao Te Ching, we don't know it's Wang Bi's philosophy or Lao Tzu's philosophy. So that's another difficult part on that. And then translation, that's another part. I don't think I have to talk a lot. And if you read the book, talk about any translation is an interpretation. And here I just want to talk about my own idea, basics. Some people being in the Tuesday group, you probably already know, I try to do the direct translation, means bring the least interpretation, okay? So, and then I try to bring the experience when you read the original text to the audience. And the number 3, I think that's important, okay, is the audience. Because I believe translation is not like once for all. Because for different audience, you need a different translation. So a lot of translation has been done 100 years ago. The audience is totally different from today's audience. That's why I believe a lot of work need a new translation, because today's English word or non-Chinese word has much different understanding of the culture, the text. So we can bring different kind of translation. So the last thing I want to talk about, then we will have 10 minutes to discuss the general issue, is this one is not in Feng Youlan's writing, but I think that's very important. Before that, Feng Youlan like to talk about this one. Kumarajima is a great, is a monk in the 5th century. He translated a lot Buddhist texts into Chinese. And he talking about the translation sounds a little bit disgusting, but now he's talking about the work of translation is just like chewing food needs to be fed to others. If one cannot chew the food oneself, one has to be given food that already been chewed. And for such operation, the food is bound to be poorer in taste and the flavor than the original. So it lost the flavor. That's Kumarajiva's comment on his work. And I like this one is from Xuanzang, which is not included in Feng Youlan's book, but that will be basic, the principle I'm following. Okay, so Xuanzang also did a lot of the Buddhist text translation. When he did the I think most of the Chinese Buddhism text was translated by Xuanzang. So he famously talked about 5 non-translation. Okay, 5 things is not going to translate. One is mysticism. Okay, so like because Buddhism has a lot of mantra, so he just keep the original sound. Same when I do the translation, I would like to see some mysticism concept. I will keep the original word, original pronunciation, like Gua or Yao, which is in the book of I Ching or book of change, right? Second thing, when the word has multi-meanings, we are not going to translate. For example, 人 in the Confucius text, 人 has many meanings to reach. You don't want just translate as a benevolence. Yi is another word. There's the meaning of righteousness, meaning of duty, justice. Okay, so there's many meanings. So in my opinion, according to Xuanzang, we should not translate. Okay. Number 3, non-existing concept, right? So if the concept is not there, you just keep the original sound. For example, today people all know when we talk about qi, okay, because that's a new concept introduced from Asia. Yin-Yang, okay, so we don't translate as black and white, strong and weak, male, female. We just translate as Yin-Yang. Something has been done traditionally, then we are not going to change it. Okay, so for example, Confucius, technically it's a wrong translation. Technically we should call 孔子. But I see some books change to 孔子 or 孟子. Okay, but or Analects, you should call 论语. Okay, but I don't think we should change it. So you just keep the tradition. And number 5, the respectable words. Okay, so you are not translate. For example, Dao. If you translate to the way, kind of lost the level, the lost the respected. Okay, and Xiang, okay, filial piety. And I try not to translate this word to filial piety because these words in Confucian teaching has his own position, high position. So I'm not going to translate. So I think we are doing fine. Okay, I finished all today's work, and I hope to the end it's not too rushed. But anyway, question, comment. Okay, we have a few minutes to do this, and then thank you everyone. And any comment, question, suggestion? That's the first one for the 28 section. Okay, so please let me know, and what you want to hear. And then I do believe the first one is the most difficult. And then because just like what I answered before, probably will generate more question and more disagreement on everything, and then to answer. Peggy, please.
Thank you, Jason. I just want to make a brief observation. I think the book by Feng Youlan was the main, his audience is the Westerners, and try to bring bridge the gap between the understanding of this, try to help, being helpful for the Westerners to understand the Chinese philosophies. I would agree that fluid form is a lot better one. And I don't know if that achieved his goal, and I do feel it in a way helpful, but also I don't want Western readers to actually think that is the Chinese philosophy that the author has delivered. And like a Western philosophers, it's not a one concept. There is diversified view, so as the Chinese philosophers. And I certainly does not agree that some Westerners thinking about those Chinese philosophies lack of depth, and not even can be regarded as a philosophy. I sort of agree to some degree, because my personal observation, indeed, not many teaching can have the depths of can be classified as a philosophy. And one exception is the Tao Te Ching. I could be biased. And what I'm saying is, I want to say a bit further about Tao Te Ching. Tao Te Ching is such a short text. I would say is the easiest to read and the hardest to understand. And once you understand it fully, you realize the depths it has. And we're talking about Taoism, Taoists. To me, no one had expanded his work thinking. So there is no such thing to me. It's like a Taoism at all, because even Zhuangzi, he merely interpret brilliantly about the work of Tao Te Ching, but he hasn't expanded anything. Now, that's not his fault, because to me, there is nothing to expand. I'm naturally a critical thinker. I like to read things with my critical eye, but so far I haven't found anything that I can think of is not covered by the book. And in comparison to other religious teaching, to me, again, could be biased. The Tao Te Ching's teaching is the most pure and with the minimal noise that comes with the most religious teaching. So that's my observation here. I want to share with you.
Thank you, Peggy. Okay, so I'm not going to comment on your depth things, everyone. And I also heard when I was in Taiwan, that the professor talked about the Western thinking is so shallow. Okay, so and then I have a teacher teaching Confucius, and he said, "Don't read the Taoism because it's so shallow, it's not practical." So everybody have a different opinion, and we're not going to argue here. But I'm not saying I disagree with you or agree with you, but basics, that's the thing. But I'd like to talk about your opinion about whether or not Feng Youlan achieved his goal, okay, to bring the gap between introduce the Western and Western. I think we will see, and then remember that the audience different. That's why at the beginning, when I spent 1.5 years to go through this book, but I didn't go chapter by chapter. I jump around. Basics, probably that's your concern, because he probably didn't bring the entire philosophy to the Western. Okay. That's why I don't follow chapter by chapter. But this time I'm going to follow the book chapter by chapter. One reason is, first reason is, that's the way to understand this philosopher. If we see him as a philosopher, okay, what in his mind? That's one thing I like to find out. Second thing is, you may notice some chapter is short, some chapter is long. So I will bring a lot of my view, okay, and which I believe, okay, will complete, okay, his shortage on that. I hope. Okay. So, and Peggy, I believe you also know a lot, or Kwang and other know a lot. Okay. So please bring to the part you feel Feng Youlan haven't achieved, and to make this section more comprehensive. And that's the purpose. Any comment? Any suggestion? And Mira, okay, please.
Did he write anything for for the Chinese people?
Yes, yes. You mean from your line, right? Anything for Chinese? Yes. So remember, I put a presentation. At the beginning, he talked about his two goals. Actually, his interest is not introduce Chinese philosophy to the West. I think his duty probably, the self-imposed duty. I give him the duty. Let's put it this way. He probably tried to think about the Renaissance, okay, of the Chinese philosophy. I think he want to bring a new perspective, Western perspective, modern perspective to the Chinese philosophy, Chinese tradition. Then he want to revise, develop his own philosophy to fit or to resolve the modern problem. Because I have another book I was originally thinking about to introduce, but later I decided to put on hold. The book called The Spirit of Chinese Philosophy, okay? But the content is totally different. He lists 10 school or 10 thinking through the history. And the last one he called New Confucianism, or he called 心理学. That's his own philosophy. So his purpose is kind of, if you read the Bertrand Russell's The History of Western Philosophy, this kind of flavor go through from the beginning to the end. And to the end, actually, that's his own philosophy. Okay, I think that's Feng Youlan want to achieve. Okay. And the book, most of the book he wrote is for Chinese people, not for the Western. So we will have a more. I think that every time I will spend a few minutes to talk about Feng Youlan as a person, because that's one of the way to understand him, other than just to understand what he want to introduce the Western philosophy. Brian? Oh, you become great heart. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, as you know, this is the second time for my wife and me to go through this, and we're very excited. We thank you for, first of all, for the first time, and secondly, now for doing it again. And anybody who has doubts about whether it's worthwhile, I can assure you that it is. The one thing I would hope is that you don't totally disregard all the wonderful material you created in the last series, but that you would add to it possibly.
Yeah, I do. I will add on. I will add on the thing, just like my answer to Peggy. And I hope everyone, including you, okay. So if you feel that something should be added on, please just add it on. Okay, let me know. Okay, so I think that's important because this book has been written long time ago, and then we have no way to expect it fit for today's purpose. And what our job is reading it and make sure we do the best we can do to make it perfect. That's the way.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's 3 minutes after 4. Okay, so thank you everyone, and then next week we talk about the game of Go. Okay, about computer. So just switch gear for a while, and then we will come back to chapter 2, 3, 4, and gradually we will finish this book. So thank you everyone, and have a nice weekend. See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank